Once upon a time, there was a man who owned a meadow on the side of a mountain. In the meadow stood a barn where he stored hay. However, for the past 2 years, there hadn't been much hay in the barn. Every St. John's Eve, when the grass was at its strongest, it was all eaten up, as if a whole flock of sheep had devoured it overnight. This happened not once but twice. The man grew tired of losing his crop and decided to take action. He told his sons, all 3 of them, that one of them must sleep in the barn on St. John's Eve. It was absurd to let the grass be eaten again. The one who went to watch had to keep a sharp eye out, he said. The eldest son volunteered to go to the meadow. He was confident he could watch the grass so well that no one, not even the devil himself, would take any of it. As evening came, he went to the barn and lay down to sleep. But as night approached, there was a rumbling and an earthquake. The walls and roof shook so much that the boy got scared and ran away, leaving the barn empty that year, just like the previous 2. The following St. John's Eve, the man insisted that one of his sons must go to the outlying field and watch the grass. The next oldest son agreed to do it. He went to the barn and lay down to sleep, just like his brother had done. But as night approached, there was a loud rumbling and an earthquake, even worse than the one before. Terrified, the youth ran away as fast as he could. The next year, it was Cinderlad's turn to watch the field. His brothers laughed at him and said mean things, but he didn't care. Cinderlad went to the field and lay down in the barn. After a while, there were scary noises like rumbling and creaking. Cinderlad thought he could handle it. But then the earth shook so much that the hay flew around. It was scary, but Cinderlad stayed calm. Eventually, everything became quiet and he heard a horse chewing outside. He saw a big, fat horse with shiny copper gear. Cinderlad used his fire steel to tame the horse. He rode it to a secret place and then went home. The next St. John's Eve, the same thing happened. Cinderlad went to the field, and there were 3 big earthquakes, much stronger than before. He saw another horse, bigger and shinier, eating the hay. He tamed it too with his fire steel and rode it to join the first horse. Then he went home again. "I bet you're going to say you watched well again," said the brothers. "Yeah, I did," said Cinderlad. So they went to check the field, and the grass was just fine. But his brothers were still mean to him. When the 3rd St. John's night came, the brothers were too scared to go, but Cinderlad went. Everything happened like before. There were 3 big earthquakes, and he saw another horse eating hay. He tamed it with his fire steel and rode it home. His brothers made fun of him again, but Cinderlad didn't care. He told them to go check the field, and the grass was fine again. In Cinderlad's country, the king had a daughter. He said only someone who could ride up a glass hill and take 3 golden apples could marry her and get half the kingdom. Many princes and knights tried, but none could do it. On the day set by the king, many knights and princes tried to ride up the glass hill to win the princess. Cinderlad's brothers didn't want him to go because he was dirty, but he said he would go alone. When Cinderlad's brothers reached the glass hill, all the princes and knights were trying to ride up it, but none could. The hill was smooth like glass and very steep. They rode and slipped, but none made progress. The horses got tired, and the riders had to give up. Just when the king was about to postpone the challenge, a knight appeared. He rode a magnificent copper horse and wore shining copper armor. Despite others' warnings, he rode up a third of the way effortlessly before turning back. The princess, impressed, threw a golden apple after him, but he disappeared quickly. That night, all the princes and knights gathered, hoping the knight would show the golden apple. None could. Cinderlad's brothers came home and told their story, praising the knight's prowess. Cinderlad, sitting by the chimney, wished he had seen the knight. His brothers mocked him for thinking he could be among such lords. The following day, Cinderlad pleaded with his brothers to let him join them, but they dismissed him, calling him too dirty and ugly. "Fine, I'll go by myself," Cinderlad declared. So, his brothers went to the glass hill, and all the princes and knights attempted to ride up it once more. This time, they made sure their horses' shoes were roughened, but it didn't make any difference. They struggled and slipped just like the day before, and not one of them managed to ascend even a yard up the hill. When their horses grew exhausted and couldn't continue, they had to stop altogether. Just as the king was considering announcing that the riding would take place one last time the next day for a final chance, he remembered to wait a little longer to see if the knight in copper armor would appear again. However, there was no sign of him. Yet, just as they continued scanning the horizon, a knight arrived riding a horse far grander than the one ridden by the knight in copper armor. This knight wore silver armor and a silver saddle and bridle, all shining brightly from a distance. Despite the other knights warning him to give up, the knight paid no attention and rode straight to the glass hill. He went even farther up than the knight in copper armor had gone, reaching 2/3 of the way before turning back. The princess admired this knight even more than the previous one and silently wished he would make it to the top. When she saw him turning back, she threw the second apple after him, and it rolled into his shoe. As soon as he descended the glass hill, he rode off so swiftly that no one could track him. Later that evening, everyone gathered before the king and princess, hoping to see the knight with the golden apple. One knight after another entered, but none had the golden apple to show. When Cinderlad's brothers returned home, they recounted the day's events. They spoke of the knight in silver armor with admiration, while Cinderlad expressed his desire to have seen him. However, his brothers scoffed at him, mocking him for being dirty. On the third day, everything happened just like before. Cinderlad wanted to go watch the riding with his brothers, but they wouldn't let him. When they reached the glass hill, no one could ride even a little way up it. Everyone waited for the knight in golden armor, but he didn't show up. After a long time, a knight arrived riding a horse like no other. The knight wore golden armor, and his horse had a golden saddle and bridle. They shone so bright that everyone was amazed, even from far away. The other princes and knights couldn't even call out to warn him about the hill because they were so astonished by his splendor. He rode straight to the glass hill and galloped up as if it were flat ground. The princess didn't even have time to wish him success before he reached the top, took the third golden apple, and rode back down. He disappeared before anyone could speak to him. When the brothers returned home that night, they talked a lot about the day's events, including the knight in golden armor. They praised him, saying he was the finest knight ever. Cinderlad expressed his wish to have seen him too. However, his brothers mocked him, comparing his dirty appearance to the coal heaps he was always among. The next day, all the knights and princes were supposed to appear before the king and princess to show the golden apple. They each took their turn, but none of them had it. "But somebody must have it," said the king, "for with our own eyes we all saw a man ride up and take it." So he commanded that everyone in the kingdom should come to the palace to see if they could show the apple. One after another, they all came, but no one had the golden apple. After a long time, Cinderlad's two brothers arrived. They were the last ones. The king asked them if there was anyone else left in the kingdom to come. "Oh yes, we have a brother," said the two, "but he never got the golden apple." He never left the cinder heap on any of the 3 days. "It doesn't matter," said the king. "Since everyone else has come to the palace, let him come too." So Cinderlad was brought to the king's palace. "Do you have the golden apple?" asked the king. "Yes, here is the first, and here is the second, and here is the third, too," said Cinderlad. He took all 3 apples out of his pocket, and then he removed his dirty clothes, revealing his shiny golden armor underneath. "You shall have my daughter and half of my kingdom." "You have earned both," said the king. So there was a wedding, and Cinderlad married the king's daughter. Everyone celebrated at the wedding, even those who couldn't ride up the glass hill. If they haven't stopped celebrating, they must still be at it.